Hello, welcome to another insightful episode of High Tea with Honey. I'm your host, Hony Premlal, and today we are celebrating Black History Month by focusing on this year's powerful theme, reclaiming narratives. It's all about shedding light on overlooked stories, amplifying success, and ensuring that Black heritage is honored in its true, unfiltered form. Joining me today is Kai Jackson, a remarkable woman whose own journey mirrors this theme of reclaiming one's voice and influencing change. Kai was born in Jamaica and grew up in Birmingham, where she now lives and contributes actively to this housing sector. She is a proud mother of three, holds a BSc in psychology and counseling, and has made a mark in various leadership roles, from chairing the Tenant scrutiny panel of Black Country Housing Group to writing the national project of Diverse Voice. So, welcome to High Tea with Honey. How are you today?
I'm very good, thank you. I'm just going to be like enjoying my cup of tea and relaxing and, hopefully looking forward to having such a nice conversation with you and, having the opportunity for more people to get to know me as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your time. And
Yes, thank you for having me today.
so, Kai, your story of growing up in Jamaica and later in Birmingham, I have a very similar story, born and raised in India and then later on living in England as well. So, it's so unique. So, can you show how those early experiences living in Jamaica have shaped you today and your passion in making a difference in social housing? Can you share your early experience in Jamaica and you coming here?
I think what it was, I was born in Jamaica, but I came here when I was very, very young, so there's not much I remember. I think I was thinking about this before and thinking about my earliest memories of my family coming here to England, and I remember we lived in a council property in Smethick, and it was so much of us in one house, and because we couldn't get anywhere else at the moment, so it's like maybe 3 or 4 different families living under one roof, and it was so cramped, and but it was home. I can't think of anything negative about the experience and like all of us living together in one property. But it was such a, for me, it was like one of my first memories that I can remember. And it was just my family being a family and being together, and we cooked all the time, and the kids were always running around, and it was just one of those things where family was always family, and we just like shared our culture. We didn't know any different. It was just like maybe a bubble that we lived in of like just moved here from Jamaica, and families still always kind of being at the center of everything that we do. We always get together around food. We're very like jovial. We love it. Oh, we're stupidly sarcastic as a family. So we love to have a laugh and get together. So, for me, it's always kind of centered around like joy and family when I think about, growing up and, what we did together.
Thank you, Kai. And Black History Month is all about celebrating untold stories. So, what is a personal or professional achievement of yours that you think hasn't got the recognition it deserves? Because it's this year's theme is about reclaiming the narratives. Do you feel, is there anything you could say, yes, you could claim that narratives? Do you feel? Or anyone you think your journey, there could be someone you think they're not getting the recognition.
I feel Since I've only been in the sector, so to speak, for just over 3 years now, and the remarkable people that I've met in the sector, people of color that I've met in the sector, people from ethnic minority backgrounds that I've met in the sector who are actually working so hard to not only exemplify Black excellence, but also to support the next generation of talent. For me, that's a lot of where my inspiration and drive comes from. Looking at it from a personal basis is, I've got to like say it to about my mom, because she a single mom with two young girls, and I've always known and seen her working and trying to do better, trying to make better for us, even though it's been hard for her. And I think that's kind of where a lot of my driving force and my work ethic really comes from, is from seeing my mom and a lot of the Black women in my family as well. We are like all professionals. There's, you know, specialist nurses, there's solicitors in my family, there are senior social workers, there's business owners as well. So seeing that kind of like skill and drive of my family as well. And it's not easy. Nothing's ever really handed on a platter, and there's always like additional barriers to overcome in driving and striving for that success. But I think they've kind of like paved the way and shown me what hard work and achievement can do. And I think that's where I kind of like get the drive to keep going, because it's what I've seen growing up, it's what I see around me, it's what I definitely want my children to see. So my biggest achievement was when I graduated. I graduated 2 years ago from the Open University, and it was so hard because I done my studies during COVID. So there was lockdown, the kids was off school as well, everything was restricted. I didn't have as much access to my tutor, and it was a lot. But to get through all of that and actually having my children at my graduation and knowing that this is what the hard work was for, this is what the sacrifice was for, this is what can be achieved if you really put your mind to it, regardless of age, regardless of circumstances, having them in the audience and just like being a part of the whole thing. I think that's like, yeah, that I would say that's the biggest achievement that I've had, and to share that with them was mind blowing for me. So yeah, it's one of those things where I see like professionally I've met like networking, and met you as well, like working in the sector, and I've seen the passion that's behind your drive. And I think that's the difference, because there's many people in the sector that work and they don't have the passion, they don't have a north star, they don't have a focus. It's just kind of like get the job done, and you know aim as high as you can, get that paycheck and all of that type of stuff. But the people that I've worked with, especially those from ethnic minority backgrounds, there's the passion behind the drive, because it's the passion that helps them to break down those barriers and to keep going when it can be so hard, when you do feel down at those times. And for me, that's that I see where they're going and I see what they're doing, and I'm like, you know what, if they can keep doing, I've just done this for like 3 years, they've done this like 20, 30 years, I can definitely keep going. So for me, seeing that and having that support and having that guidance and continuing to do what I'm doing is kind of, for me, is what Black history resonates for me, and definitely what Black excellence resonates for me as well.
That's amazing to hear. I can understand, when you're working, you're studying, and bringing your family. it's a lot, but when you have that passion that put you, I know I've gone through journeys like that, so I can resonate that as well. Okay, so you have worn many hats: senior healthcare assistant, chair of a scrutiny panel, member of the NatFed tenant advisory panel, and more. What has driven you to take such varied roles, obviously, and how do you interconnect your work today? So, can you take that through our viewers?
Yeah, I honestly and genuinely love what I do. I've always been kind of like in the care service, in the, people service, so to speak. I've always had a passion, and I've always known that I want to serve in some way, shape, or form. I don't know if that's coming across right, but I've always wanted to like help in some way, or it's never always kind of been more about the money aspect for me. I just like to have something that I'm really, really passionate about, and this has become such a passion and a drive for me that I didn't even expect. um as you know, I've studied psychology and counseling, so I always thought that I was going to be more in the healthcare side, which I've always done. But to kind of interlock what I've known for all those years that I've worked in healthcare and working with people and talking with people, understanding the challenges, understanding the importance of having a home and the environment, the adaptations, the life expectancy that it brings with it when you have those facilities in your home, having family be around people as well, or them living by themselves. So it's definitely knowing the importance of what a home is, but I didn't think it would like cross cut from healthcare to now in housing. But the transition has been like so smooth, and it has been so natural for me that it hasn't really felt like a chore or anything in any way. So I absolutely love wearing those different hats, and for me it's always, I'm always a learner. So no matter how much that I'm doing, I always know that there's more that I can learn, there's more that I can do, and I don't take for granted that I feel that I've reached the pinnacle in any way, shape, or form, because life changes, people change, situations change, and there's always a different perspective or a conversation that you can have from somebody completely new, and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't really think of it like that. Because one of the examples that I would bring up, I went to a meeting of elderly Asian people in it was set up by Black Country Housing Group, and I went along, and there was talking about supported living and why not much people from ethnic minority backgrounds, especially Asian people, are in supported living. I think for us it's more generational. We're used to looking after our elderly people and not putting them in supported living accommodation. So I think for me that's kind of cultural, but at the same time you are trying to understand on a different level. And somebody came to me, one of the gentlemen came to me, and he just said something so simple that I'm aware of supported living, but would I be able to cook my own food? And it was like a light bulb moment that, there's a lot of times in supported living, you do have catering there, you have kitchen staff, and you don't really think to yourself that this is something that someone may be thinking is taken away from them, that they won't be able to carry on with their culture, their cuisine, and things like that. And it's something so simple, but it's another barrier that you don't really think about until somebody actually says it to you. And you're like, of course you can cook your own food, but if this one person is thinking it, then maybe other people from the same backgrounds are thinking the same thing as well. So, you can never know everything about somebody or something. So, everything changes all the time. So, I absolutely love like talking to people and hearing their stories and hearing what can be done. So yeah, I know I wear many hats, but I absolutely love the diversity of thinking and conversation that comes along with it as well.
So you mentioned about Black Country Housing Group, and I know they are very passionate about. I think if you don't have a say from a customer, then you don't approve or something like that. They have a particular mantra that you would say. So, as a chair of the scrutiny panel, you led numerous reviews and stage two complaints. Can you talk us through some of the major challenges you faced and how your leadership has made a difference in that circumstances?
Oh gosh, that's the mantra that they have is no voice, no approval. So unless a new policy or a service has a resident voice behind it or some kind of resident feedback, when it goes to the board won't fully approve it because they want to know, okay, what does the end customer think about the service that you're providing or the policy? Is it easy to understand? Have we got any spellings wrong or, things of that nature? So that's something that's kind of, it is very much embedded in the governance with Black Country Housing Group. And I've definitely seen it work as well, where if it doesn't have a tenant voice behind it, then it's really hard to push it through to the board because the board always say, okay, what has the tenant said about this, or have you had any feedback or anything like that? So that's what I really admire about Black Country Housing Group. I think when I started, it was a completely new board, so they had scrutiny panels before, but you know how these things are. There's always like trial and error. There's difficulties and things like that. So it's kind of like started from a very, very fresh new approach and a new place. So we went through all the training and everything like that. Like just to rewind a little bit, I the reason why I got to knowing about the scrutiny panel is because I think some people may have heard this story before, but me and my children were racially abused for months by my neighbor. We were threatened with violence. We would hear them shouting the N word in the middle of the night, banging. When we did try and approach them, there was disgusting remarks to say the least. And, it was very threatening. And at the time of COVID, when it happened as well, that's added stress and pressure and everything that's going on. And, you know, Black Country were aware of it, but they didn't handle that situation properly. So it was definitely a learning for them. It eventually went higher up and it was dealt with, but in my opinion, it took too long and went too far before it was actually dealt with properly. Even the police was involved in it, and there was arrests and all sorts of stuff. So it shouldn't have gone to that point, but it was eventually dealt with. And I was invited to a focus group to talk about what happened and how it was dealt with. I do have to give credit where credit's due. Black Country Housing did eventually hold their hand up and say we got this wrong and we're taking the learning from it, so hopefully it doesn't happen again. Um, I was invited to the focus group and different meetings, and I was told that they are setting up a new scrutiny panel. It's very strategic. Would you like to come along, see if it's something for you? So I went to a couple of meetings, met some tenants on there. It started from a wide number of tenants. I think it was maybe like 20 tenants. And then it kind of like started to dwindle down for those who thought it was for them or wasn't. And eventually I just knew that going through the process, this is something that I really wanted to do. And this is something that I knew that I could do. So eventually I was voted in as chair. I became the first person of color to hold a chair position within Black Country Housing Group. So that was an unexpected bonus to it. Um, and I have to be honest, I have the most amazing panel. They are absolutely funny. They are lovely. They've welcomed me and supported me as their chair. It wasn't always the case. Obviously, you go through teething periods where you getting to know people, and some unnecessary remarks were made, which I've kind of put into a blog that I um, wrote for CIH. But it was all learning for me, but I still knew that I could do it. And for me, I would rather discredit somebody by showing them the achievements and what I can do rather than arguing with them. So I I just loved what I was doing. So it was an everyday conversation with Black Country Housing Group because I wanted to make sure that we wasn't a tick box panel. I wanted to make sure that our voices was actually genuinely heard. We took up this role voluntary, so I didn't want to waste any time. My method was to get to know my panel, get to know their strengths, their weaknesses, what they wanted to do, what they didn't like doing, working around that, making sure they were happy, getting to know them. I think I really went above and beyond in my role now that I'm thinking about it. But for me to have that strong panel where I could phone them or text them at a notice now and ask them, could you go to this meeting? And they're more than happy to do that because they trust my leadership. And also making sure Black Country knew that we were not going to be a tick box panel as well, and we wanted to be actively involved. The board and the executive team were absolutely brilliant. They made sure and treated us like board members. So this is where I think the leadership plays a very strong role. So what they did is when we went in, they shut down the whole building, treated us like we were actually board members. And, we had the parking spaces and everything, had meetings with their staff and said, this is RSVP, liken them onto the board. We listen to them if they want information, give them access to information, and they just had that transparency to not put additional barriers in our way. They just wanted to know that if there's something wrong, something affecting tenants, we need to deal with it. Our CEO, I remember she came into a meeting, and I think, looking back, I think I was ruder than I should have been to her. But it was one of those things that she just kind of like took it on the head and just was like, okay, I think I was having a bad day in that meeting. And I said to her that, do you think that the maintenance department is actually wearing shoe coverings? They're not being respectful to tenants. No, it's not happening. And you need to understand that. I kind of like went for her a little bit, but she listened to what I had said. She understood, the information and everything was behind it too. And she really took that and implemented it in the organization to say that, we need fit training as well. So first impression training to make sure there's stronger customer service within the organization, to make sure tenants feel more comfortable. This was also translated onto the repairs and maintenance team as well. So it's not just the staff, it's anybody that has contact with tenants. So it's just to make sure that tenants feel comfortable with somebody being in their home, answering the telephone, anything that's like tenant related. So it was a lot of working together that kind of changed the culture of the organization. Not just to say that we're doing this as a tick box, it actually has people in the back office who wouldn't normally work with tenants coming forward and actually meeting us and knowing that We're not just a number on the computer screen. We're not just part of the asset to the organization. We are actually people living in these properties, and it took that collaboration to get to a strong tenant focused organization. They don't have it perfectly. I don't think anybody in the sector has it like nailed down perfectly, but I do see the intent behind it, and I do see the passion and drive behind it, which is why I'm so willing to work and collaborate as much as possible with BCHD, because I know behind what they do is good intentions, even though they don't always get it right. But I do know there's learning that comes from it too. So yeah, what else can I say? I do actually love what I do, and I have developed so much in that role as well. So yeah, I just, I suppose a lot of it is to do with my personality too, but I do actually love my panel, and I do have a very soft spot in my heart for BCHD. So yeah.
So I'm very sorry, Kai, you have experienced that. No one should be going through that experience, and the work we are doing in the sector need to, challenge those behaviours through our landlords or even CIA and NatFed. All of those working together, we need to challenge that. So from that really horrible experience, you actually made into something really special. It's a remarkable experience, and I would say Black Country Housing is very lucky to have you. Such committed, talented, passionate person leading that scrutiny. This is an amazing experience. So moving on to, I know you authored the national project Diverse Voice, transforming tenant influence in social housing. So, what inspired this project, and what impact do you hope to have in the housing sector, especially Black and minority tenants?
What inspired this project is when, as a tenant, you go to these different conferences and these different meetings, and you see very few tenants that look like me. And if the point of the conversation is to find out what's working within your organization and what's not working in your organization, how you can improve services, then why wouldn't you want to hear as much of the tenant voice and different perspective and experiences as possible to improve those services and reduce complaints within your organization? But unfortunately, for me, I saw that there was a lack of voices that were being heard. And I thought it was so crazy that in these decision making arenas and these decision making places, that people aren't acknowledging that you don't have everybody, you're not representative of everybody, but yet there were so much different meetings of diversity, so much different conversations around inclusion, but yet not everybody was included. There wasn't a diverse tenant base. And with everything that happened with Grenfell, and looking at the law and the change of the Social Housing Regulation Act, was it not incumbent upon organizations to actually, like for me, with the Social Housing Regulation Act and different conversations around EDI, equality, diversity, and inclusion, but yet there was such a big gap where people from ethnic minority backgrounds were not having their voices heard, but they were the ones that were so disproportionately affected by indecent properties, poor services, increased complaints. And you can't, for me, as somebody working or a part of the sector, you can't truly say that you're diverse, but yet you're not reaching out and making sure that there is diverse conversations around that table within those conversations. So it was important for me to kind of like highlight and just ask the fundamental question of why. I think that's what the basis of my project is, just to ask tenants from ethnic minority backgrounds, why do you not choose to get involved when you're living in these properties, you're living in these communities? It's disproportionately disadvantaged to you. The law says you have a say, the regulator says you have a say, the ombudsman says you have a say. All of these policies are changing to say that you have a say, but yet you are not having a say. So why is that? Why are you not getting involved? And it was important for me to kind of ask that question, because when I was doing my research, there's no other research out there to ask tenants and find out why tenants from ethnic minority backgrounds are not participating in any formal engagement with their landlords. So for me, that was kind of something that was shocking as well, especially given the importance of the tragedies that have happened in the sector and the failings of indecent properties when it comes to tenants, completely. So why has that not been looked into, and actually asking people rather than assuming what the issue is or assuming how they can make it better? Wouldn't it just be easier to just ask people directly, what is the problem? What can we do? How can we work together to make it better? And for me, that was important in this project. And, it was definitely a blessing for me, because I've spoken to so many different people from ethnic minority backgrounds, and their stories are heartbreaking. It is shocking to see, as a sector, where we are still failing, where people are even saying that they want to kill themselves. We're in a sector that people are calling people from ethnic minority backgrounds chaotic groups of people. It's just, it's just so shocking that we're still in this mindset, regardless of like how much work has been put in. And looking at the tragedies that have happened from failing in services, how people who think in certain ways are still working within the sector and affecting people's lives. It's affecting people's children's lives. It's generational. The decisions that are made within the housing sector are generational decisions, because you're talking about services that do affect them and their children and their family, that's been implemented throughout the organization, that are long lasting as well. And it's hard. The my project did kind of like highlight that there is still so much that we need to do when building trust between those from ethnic minority backgrounds and registered providers. And you know it's sad. Don't get me wrong, there are a lot of good stories out there. There are a lot of good case studies out there as well. There are a lot of staff members like yourself as well that are so passionate, so wanting to work hard, so wanting to help people, so wanting to make sure that people are living in good, decent, safe homes as well. But the barriers that it takes to actually achieve these things are so unnecessary and so hard that a lot of people do give up. They get worn out. It's sad. And for me, it's always going to be, my drive is people should not be dying in their home based purely on the color of their skin or based on their ethnic backgrounds. That's something that should never happen and should not happen again in the future. So for me, that's where a lot of my drive and passion comes from also. And it's good to hear people. It's very humbling as well for me to hear people say, okay, with this project you're highlighting what I've been saying so for so many years. I've been trying to say something for like 10 years and nobody's been listening to me. And this project really does highlight, and it, widens the voice of what's happening, and, what we can do. And it's very humbling for me to hear people who I've never met come onto a one of my sessions and say thank you, when this was kind of done from a observation perspective, and to actually see how it's resonated and helped people and echo um, voices in the sector. I've never been one to take away people's voices. They should always have that for themselves. But for me, it's always about echoing their voices and saying that, you know, it's not working well. We need to do better. This is how it's been affecting people. This is what we can do. This is what tenants in the south are saying. This is what tenants in the north are saying. This is how we may be able to help and do better. So the project is kind of like highlighted and kind of given that platform. For me, the important thing to do now is to change the culture of the sector and change the culture of organizations where tenants voice, regardless of their backgrounds, but elevating those from ethnic minority backgrounds and actually getting people heard rather than just listen to. We need to actually hear what people are saying. We need to be proactive. We need to actually do something. We can sit down and talk all day and hear so much stories of where things are going wrong. And then by tomorrow, we've moved on to something different. What we need to actually do is be proactive and not just, pay the lip service of, I do feel sorry for, what you're going through. But we need to actually act upon it. You can't just keep saying that you're sorry about what's going on and not do nothing to make it better. And I think that's what the shift that we really need in the sector now, where tenants need to actually see that landlords are putting their money where their mouth is and actually want to change, rather than just saying, oh, we want to change, we want to do this, we want to do that. Well, actually do it. We've got to the point where we've done the research, we've done the data, we've had the conversations, we've had the sessions, we've got the framework. We need to actually see those changes and see that you really want to make those changes rather than just saying it. So, if nothing else, I want my project to echo people's voices and put their voices on a platform that they feel that they can inspire changes with, not just with where they live, but throughout the sector as well, and know that they can be a part of these conversations and be a part of these conversations as well.
I echo what you're saying, Kajaks. And obviously, it's been working in the sector for almost 3 decades. One of the things when I was standing for the CIH president, my focus was to have more diversity on the board and leadership positions. So you may see when I go to conferences, if it's a chairs session or senior people session, very few people I see look like me. So there's still a massive barrier. A lot of organizations, sadly, is a tick box exercise, and the tokenism is still is a challenge. So I'm with you, Kai, to on this journey and campaign and fight to get that voice heard. It's really important, because otherwise, it just, like you said, you talk about one thing today, and the next day there is a new story comes. People jump on that. So well done for making that push, and I'm behind you in that journey. So you're a school governor, mother of three. How do you balance these important roles, and what lessons do you hope to pass on to the next generation and reclaiming their narratives? Obviously, you're talking about Black History Month and trying to bring it back.
Yeah, I became a school governor because for my youngest one, she's 9. Um, there was a point where a lot of the work that I'm doing and the conferences and the traveling, it kind of took me away from home and took me a little bit distant from my family. So being a school governor reminds me and kind of keeps me into, the loop of what she's doing at school. Is it, making things better? And I think with the area that I live in and the school that she's at, diversity was very, very low. There is, and there was very few people that looked like my daughter at her school. And there was a point where she felt very isolated. It has improved now, but there were incidences from other parents that I would speak to where they felt like they were being discriminated against or their child was being discriminated against. And for me, I didn't want that for my daughter. So maybe in that position kind of keeps me around her. And, when I would go to a school on governor visits, I would just pop into her classroom or see her at lunchtime and give her a little hug and a kiss. And, all of her friends will say, "Oh, Kayla, there's your mom. She's in school again." So, for her to know that regardless of the work that I do and how it may take me to Manchester or Liverpool or to London sometime, I'm still always going to be as present as possible as I can in her life, and always going to try and exemplify and show that no matter how much that you can do elsewhere, home is where my heart is and my children is where my heart is. So I would definitely do everything that I can to make sure that their future is, at the forefront of what I do. I know what I'm doing now is to set up a better future for my children, and I want my children to see, mom, she's doing meetings, she's here, she's there, she's writing reports, she's like superwoman and everything. But I want them to see that hard work and drive can really get you somewhere, and it's never going to be easy, but you can do it. And I just want to, like, as I said, with them being at my graduation and then continuing with what I'm doing as well, I see my children post on Snapchat like videos and pictures of me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that you was like, taking these things offline and stuff and posting them and saying, hashtag supermom, or, I'm proud of her and things like that. And, for me, that kind of, oh gosh, I'm not going to get upset now. Those things for me is like the kind of like cherry on top of what I'm doing, because especially like my son, he doesn't like outwardly project emotions. So having him post videos and pictures of me and the comments that he makes and things like that, and I'm, you know, for me that's like, that's like my, that's everything to me. So, looking at the next generation, I remember we had a meeting as part of my project on there was about 16 black professionals as part of that lunch and learn session. And I asked them as well, what is your drive for staying in a sector that has treated you badly, has discriminated against you? You feel like you can't get promoted because people from other backgrounds are getting promoted over you. They've been taking your work, having all of these different challenges. What kind of keeps you in this sector? And majority of them was like, because I know what I'm doing is going to be better for my children. And we know that we're not going to see the achievements now. But I know that when my son or my daughter or my grandchildren want to access housing, there may not be as much barriers for them, and there may not be as much discrimination that they have to go through because of the work that we're doing today. And for me, that kind of answered my question as well. It's the same answer that I would give to. And I thought to myself, wow, you guys, you are truly amazing. So yeah, for the next generation, I do work to, try and break down those barriers, not have as much discrimination, open conversations, safe spaces for them to be and to work and not feel like they're taken advantage of or stepped over because of the color of their skin or their cultural background. I would just want things to be easy. And I think that's kind of one of the things that resonate when it comes to Black History Month, because those who came before us, our ancestors, they went through hell. And I know what we're going through is nothing compared to what they went through as well. But with their suffering and their achievements, they paved the way for me to be having this conversation with you, for me to be here. And I think that's how, we constantly, and we look at it, one step forward makes it easier and helps to break down that barrier for the next generation to make it easier and having these conversations. So I think it's just for me it's important to have those conversations with my children about Black history, the achievements, the inventions, the struggling, that they went through as well, not to sugarcoat it. And, just to say to them, be proud of your history, be proud of the achievements. Don't just look at what the media portrays Black history to be. Actually, do your research and ask those questions, investigate, look into things. And, I think from 2020, when with the George Floyd murder, we do at home have a lot of open discussion conversations when it comes to race, and especially how my children feel about things that may have happened to them at school. Like with my son, one of the teachers said to him that the only future I see you having is as a drug dealer. And I thought to myself, it's just, these are what you're putting into children's heads. Obviously, I went all mama bear and, that teacher was fired. But it's these things that I want my children to openly come and have these conversations and say that, Mom, this teacher said that to me. Or, for my daughter to say, my little girl came home one day and said that something about her friend at school said about her family. She doesn't have a dad because her dad doesn't stay around, just perpetuating the negative stereotypes of Black people. And it's the reality of life. It's the reality of the society that we live in, that unfortunately we have to deal with these situations, and we have to have these conversations with our children. Because for me, when I look at it, my son leaving the home, there's no guarantee he may come home because of somebody's ignorance and hatred towards him, just purely because of the color of his skin. And one thing that kind of always stayed in my head and kind of always never left me, it was 4 years ago when my daughter would have been 5 at the time. She, with the whole Black Lives Matter and, with all the murders that was happening in America and with George Floyd and everything that was going on, she looked at me and she said, Mom, why do they hate us? And it just made me freeze, because I didn't know how to answer that question. And even now, I don't know how to answer that question for her. So it's just one of those things where all I can do as a mother and in my position is to hopefully continue to have these open conversations, to address discrimination, to show that they can achieve and do it regardless of, how people may feel about them due to the color of their skin. And, highlight be proud of who you are, be proud of what your ancestors have done and achieved, and you know, the flowers they've poured on the ground so you can walk upon and have a better future. And just be proud of the color of your skin, and be proud that you get to go to school, and the achievements and the things that your ancestors have done for you. And just be proud of who you are, period. And that's what I want my children to continuously have, and have those conversations, and be open and be honest, and, you know, just to live and achieve and have a better future. And, not to have to walk into a shop and be looked at by security because of the color of their skin. I remember one incident when I was in the city center, and I walked into a shop, and a white couple was walking out of the shop. At that same time, the security alarms went off, but yet the security guard was following me and my daughter in the shop. But we had come in and somebody had just left. Would you not think that if they had stole something? And it's like these things, and you think to yourself, wow, we're still here. This is still the mindset. But all we can do is just keep working and keep trying. And as those like strong black professionals said, is to make a better future for our children, and to break those barriers, as much as we can with the time that we have here. So for me, it's just Black History Month is a constant reminder. It's not just Black History Month, it's every day of our lives. It's just a reminder of, what's happened before, and what we can do to move on and have a better future. And, you know, pay homage and respect to what's happened in the past, and elevate on what we can do going forward.
That's amazing to hear, Kai. What you're doing to obviously make your children proud and make many other people in our community proud as well. So even I can still hear your stories and inspiring. It's actually inspiring me as well. So I can keep on listening. So finally, we are just thinking about with all your accomplishment and influence you have done, what's next? What's any projects in your mind? You thinking, okay, is there anything you have in your mind, or any other things you want to share to our audience before we wrap up? Is there anything else?
I would love to keep doing what I'm doing. I would love to meet more people. I would love to um, be more accessible. I would love to have more influence in the sector and help to make those changes. Um, I, the plan for me next is to kind of like finish up writing my project. Like I've been writing for months now, but it's like 23 pages so far, and I've still got more to do. So I can't wait for people to hear the findings and stuff that has come from it, to have those conversations, open up those dialogues, and to actually get organizations more invested in cultural change as well. So for me is, possibly more speaking engagements, more interactions, workshops, training, for me, conversations. And I would just love to, be more present, and, continue the drive and the importance, and, making people from ethnic minority backgrounds understand that they do have a voice, and they don't need to be muted in any way, or feel like they can't express themselves, and know about what's out there. A lot of ethnic minority tenants didn't even know that they could, be a part of engagement within their organization. They didn't know there's so much things out there that can support them and help them, and I want to hopefully have a space where they can communicate and talk with people and just feel comfortable to express themselves in that space. So yeah, there's my thought process is like a mile a minute at this point, but yeah, I would definitely love to continue doing what I'm doing, and I absolutely do love it. So hopefully it's onwards and upwards from here.
So thank you so much, Kai, for sharing your story, your experiences, amazing insights as well. So many things you did said. Obviously, it's something what I can see is your passion. You can see that passion for tenant advocacy, leadership, and shaping the housing sector and making a lasting impact. I can see that clearly as we celebrate Black history, and your work exemplifies the theme of reclaiming the narratives that very clearly, giving voice to those who often go underheard and ensuring the diverse perspective at the forefront of the housing sector. So it's really that Black history is really what you can relate to very easily. So I want to say to our listeners, thank you for joining us for another episode of High Tea with Honey. Let's continue to celebrate Black history by not only recognizing past achievements, but also by supporting and amplifying the voices of Black leaders like Kai Jackson, who are shaping the future. Until next time, take care and thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.